have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And a note to the control room. We need some sound out here. In the headlines this week, I want to start with some good news. The new governor of North Carolina is pro-LGBT.
It's a fascinating story that happened, and we'll go into it. But the Trump cabinet continues to be a house of anti-LGBT horrors.
A leading lawyer for the religious right wants the Trump administration to have the Stonewall Inn demolished.
You know, I don't know that story, so I'm really eager to hear it from you. The rainbow flag is becoming a symbol of resistance to Trumpian bigotry nationwide.
12 big LGBT and civil liberties groups are calling on President Obama again to commute the sentence of Chelsea Manning. And a bunch of other people before he leaves.
We have a list.
Before they all go to the gulag.
Yeah. Alabama's LGBT center in Huntsville has been destroyed in a major storm.
Terrible story. And Dr. Burton Lee, who was the first President Bush's doctor, who became an advocate for people with AIDS, has died.
And we congratulate one of our recent guests, Terrell Alvin McCraney. We'll tell you about his new job. But we start with North Carolina?
Sure.
Okay. Well, in North Carolina, now almost former Governor Pat McCrory has finally conceded that he lost the election to Attorney General Roy Cooper, the Democrat.
By about 10,000 votes. It was a close election. We were worried that the legislature, which is still in right-wing hands, still in veto-proof right-wing hands.
Yes.
So it's going to be tough for Governor Roy Cooper.
But the interesting thing...
But it's going to be better than having Pat McCrory there.
Oh, my God, yes. But a couple of interesting things. First of all, the polling they've done in the state shows that it was specifically House Bill 2, the anti-LGBT bill, that was the top item that got McCrory defeated. And that's astonishing. People very clearly focused in on the fact that he brought terrible publicity and a lot of loss of business, sporting events, business, jobs, economic repercussions to the state, shame, stigma.
Yet, they didn't take it out on the legislators who put this up. Of course, they've gerrymandered themselves into districts that they can't lose.
You're so precise to say gerrymandered, but the rest of us say gerrymandered.
Because it was Elbridge Gerry that it was named for.
I know. But they also didn't take it out on Trump, who won the electoral votes of North Carolina, or the sitting Republican Senator Richard Burr, who they reelected. So this was a really focused hit job to get rid of the governor. And the interesting
thing about McCrory is that he was this moderate, mayor of Charlotte, North Carolina, and he just didn't have the guts to stand up to the legislature.
Right.
And now he's being brought in by the Trump people to see about an administration position.
I would say it's more than just not being willing to stand up to the legislature. He really got on board with this right-wing stuff, and he was absolutely adamant about defending the law, signing the law, defending the law, yelling at us. He went whole hog on that.
And of course, the shorthand in the media for that law is the bathroom law, and it only had to do with transgenders, and it did have to do with transgender people, but it also took away from the cities the right to enforce human rights laws, essentially.
Well, it forbade cities from passing any non-discrimination law that went beyond existing state law, which means no law that could outlaw discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity, because that's not included in the state law. So cities like Charlotte lost their non-discrimination.
It went beyond that in terms of limiting the ability of cities to enforce their human rights laws.
Yes, and there was a whole thing about not being able to sue, and it was very widespread.
And you know, we face these laws.
So Roy Cooper has said he
Yes.
wants to repeal the law, and the interesting thing now will be, since he won, and since he won on that issue specifically, will the very right-wing, rigid state legislature stand up for what it did in passing HB2, or is there a way around them?
They won't. I mean,
they will stand up for HB2.
These are the you know, the Trump supporters,
yeah.
And they are full of themselves, and they aren't just passing bad laws. They're physically attacking people across this country, and we're going to talk more about that.
Yeah.
And we are facing all kinds of anti-LGBT laws across the country in the state legislatures, and we're going to talk about how that's going to work out. A new study called Keep Texas Open for Business says, you go ahead and do this anti-LGBT legislation here in Texas, you're going to cost the economy of Texas $8.5 billion. I mean, this is part of what's going to happen in the Trump years, I think. States are going to either get better about this or they're going to get worse about this. And states like New York, California, et cetera, have to even get better to protect our people, while these other states are going to be, you know, just cutting people off, as the federal government is going to be cutting social services, healthcare, all those other kinds of things.
Let's do an update on the transition. By the way, I'm astonished by the extent to which Obama has really been basically forgotten these days by the news media. The focus on Trump is just 24 hours a day.
Well, I mean, he did his national security, he talked in front of the troops this week, and
yeah, but no one's really paying attention to any of that. More on him in a minute.
I wish he were more aggressive as the leader of the opposition now. I'm all for him, you know, trying to educate the incoming people. A daunting task, but...
Well, I saw something revealing in the coverage of Trump, and I don't remember whether this was one of his transition officials or someone commenting on it, but they referred to a coming tsunami of executive orders for the first day. They were quite explicit about it. They were saying it on the air, that they are preparing a tsunami of executive orders for the first day in office.
And getting rid of Obama's executive orders, which will likely, we'll be reporting on this, but likely include the ones that protect us to a great extent. The biggest one being protecting us from discrimination by federal contractors, which is 25% of the employment in the United States, folks.
Now, some of those contractors will continue to not discriminate on their own, but we need the law for those who are not standing up quite so nicely. Yes. And the fact that the head of Exxon is up for a job after all their years of discriminating against us is very depressing.
Some of you voted for Trump, but what are you getting? You're getting oligarchs, you're getting a junta, basically, in terms of military people coming in. I mean, General Mad Dog Mattis.
Oh, he's the good one.
Well, this is the one Hillary wanted to speak at the convention.
Yeah.
And he's the one saying we need to work with allies. But he does, but we are supposed to have civilian control of the military.
Yes.
We haven't had a military guy do this since what? Since
look,
General Marshall.
Just think about what civilian he would put in charge of the military.
Well.
Here's what we get. We get Ben Carson at Housing and Urban Development.
And General Mattis is a lifelong bachelor, which in my day used to mean something else. But anyway, look, he's not he's no saint. I mean, he was in Afghanistan in 2005, and he said it was a hell of a lot of fun to shoot people, especially Afghans who slap women around for 5 years for not wearing a veil. It's going to be fun shooting them. This is his attitude. There are reports that he presided over slaughters of people in these regions, war crimes essentially. So
I have a new data point on our coming Attorney General Jeff Sessions too. We know about his racist comments decades ago, and his general attitude towards us. In 1996, 20 years ago, he was the Attorney General of Alabama, and he tried very, very hard to stop the University of Alabama from holding an LGBT and HIV conference. He was writing them nasty letters, he was threatening them, he was He went way out of his way to try to stop it. Did not succeed, I'm happy to say.
He thinks the Attorney General doth protest too much, and that's all I'm going to say. Basically, you correct me if I'm wrong, we still don't have any appointments that Trump's made that are anything but polarizing. He seems to be in denial about now losing by 2.7 million votes in terms of having to make any accommodation to anybody else.
Oh, no, he won in a landslide and he has a mandate.
Yeah, right. But there's, you know, as Charles Blow of the Times wrote, it's not up to us to unite behind him. It's up to him to try to unite us, and he's not making any effort whatsoever, other than that meeting with Al Gore, I guess.
Well, I continue to believe that he is ignorant of everything, has no idea what he's in for, and is being controlled by puppeteers who are telling him who to appoint. Do I think Donald Trump knows who Betsy DeVos is, or Tom Price, or any of these people he's appointing? Jeff Sessions hung around him a lot during the campaign, but I don't think he has any real sense of who Jeff Sessions is. He is appointing the people he's being told to appoint, the direction in which he's being pointed, and he has no idea of the implications. He has no real ideology, and all he wants to do is jawbone corporations.
Now, Democrats are gearing up for the confirmation hearings on those who need to be confirmed. And they are saying we're going to raise not just their bigotry, but their conflicts of interest.
Well, fine, but they don't have the votes.
Well, you can embarrass people sometimes to the extent.
They don't care.
Well, just
they're going to
saying,
get the power.
You
can embarrass them all day long, but if they got the job.
There are times when the people rise up because they say, that's just not fair.
Yes.
And if it's bad enough, I mean, my God, who was the woman for Attorney General in the Clinton administration?
Zoe Baird.
Who hadn't paid taxes for her nanny.
I know.
Was enough.
Yeah, well, we're living under a different standard now, and that will not be enough to kill any of these nominees.
None of this stuff with General Flynn and his son is going to hurt him at NSA? The National Security Administration?
I think Flynn, in the best of all possible worlds, Flynn should be the most vulnerable. But I suspect that they are all going to unite to put these people in office. Please, prove me wrong. Well, let's talk about the resistance.
Well, I mean, we should also, I mean, we shouldn't skip over lightly the fact that Ben Carson is headed for the Housing and Urban Development.
I mentioned that, and you skipped right over it.
All right. All right, so let's talk. Well,
speaking, and the damage these people are going to do, you know, no more public housing, no more public education, no more Medicare and Medicaid. I am exaggerating, but really all they're there to do is undercut all of those programs, throw people out in the streets, leave them to the wolves, and tell us that they're doing them a favor.
Right, because then they have freedom.
Yeah, exactly. But all they have to do is say that, and the American people will go along with a lot of it.
I do want to talk about what's going. People have to be really attuned right now to what they're going to be doing to the Affordable Care Act, which they are promising to phase out now, because they're afraid of us to some extent. They're afraid of dumping these things all at once.
Well, they are afraid of seniors, God knows, and they're afraid of.
But so while they won't do Medicare vouchers right away, and they won't do the Affordable Care Act right away, although they said they're going to repeal it, but then that'll be happening 3 years from now. Medicaid, which is for poor people, they're happy to just slaughter as soon as they get in.
Yeah.
So it's, you know.
We can't afford it.
Chuck Schumer is calling it the war on seniors, and that's a good phrase, and he says bring it on. He's going to be the new minority leader. By the way, there is this move on January 3rd to try to get the Senate, when it is in Democratic hands for 5 minutes after the old Senate retires, the leftover senators will be majority Democrat, to confirm Merrick Garland on that day, in that session, before they swear, right in the session where they're about to swear in the new ones. If they had any guts, Democrats, you would do it and give us a buffer, because I think the appointment can only last till the end of the year. Of 2017. It wouldn't be a permanent. Oh, actually, they could confirm them, yes, and it would be permanent if they do it that way. It wouldn't be a recess appointment.
Right.
Right.
But a recess appointment would only be for a year.
Yes, a recess appointment is only to the end of the year.
So we need the Senate to do it, not just Obama.
Right.
All right, well, there is some resistance here and there, starting in Washington, D.C., in the Chevy Chase neighborhood, although Chevy Chase is in Maryland, but evidently there's also a Chevy Chase neighborhood next door in the district. Mike Pence is renting a house there. So these are his new neighbors putting up rainbow flags because they got together and they said, what can we do to indicate our resistance? And their answer was rainbow flags, not because they're LGBT, but just because that struck them as an appropriate. They knew about his anti-gay stuff, and they decided rainbow flags. He's renting temporarily before he moves into the vice president's residence.
As I noticed a couple of weeks ago, it was the first sign of life I've seen in our shell-shocked city. I was at the Museum of Modern Art, and they took Gilbert Baker's rainbow flag, which is the only flag they've ever acquired in their history, moved it from a side room on an upper floor, and they put it right in the main floor in the lobby. I'm sure that's the reason that they did it.
And a woman in the Seattle, Washington area got a visit from a new neighbor who had heard that they were fellow Mormons and who was reaching out to her, except that this woman is an ex-Mormon and very progressive, and the new neighbor is very homophobic.
Yep.
And so the woman wanted to indicate to her neighbor without screaming at her that she did not agree with her views. So she had an idea of what to do with some Christmas lights. She made
10,000 rainbow lights, 10,000, count them.
So that's her new hedge between her house and the new neighbor's house. No word yet on what the neighbor thinks of all that.
Now, I'm going to mispronounce this name, and I apologize in advance for not looking it up, but the 1986 Nobel Prize-winning author Wole Soyinka, W-O-L-E,
Soyinka, yes, I think so.
Said he's fulfilled his promise to throw away his United States green card and relocate. Now that Trump has won, he says, I've done it. He's from Nigeria, and he said this at an education conference in Johannesburg.
Is it time to show this?
Well, that might give people some hope amidst all we're talking about.
Well, we decided that...
Or nostalgia.
And nostalgia, I think, is more it. As President Obama finishes out his last few weeks in office, we wanted to show you a few minutes of him at the LGBT Pride reception at the White House this past June, 6 months ago. He did it every year when he was in office, so this is the last one, the 8th one. And he talks about what he was able to accomplish, and he talked about people being alert for what's coming. And this was before Trump was elected, when we all still thought that was impossible.
Not you.
Not me, but...
You warned me.
I'm a Cassandra.
And that helped that you, because Ann used to say, brace yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
It could happen here.
Yeah. But we wanted to show you what you'll be missing
yes.
in the next few years.
And that you're not going to hear anymore.
But it was really nice to hear it at the time. So here is President Obama.
Everybody. Hello. Good to see you. Hello. Well, welcome to the White House. Let me, first of all, let me acknowledge some outstanding public servants who are here. We've got Secretary of the Army Eric Fanning is in the House. Export-Import Bank Chairman Fred Hochberg is here. We've got some amazing members of Congress. No one who has done more on behalf of justice and equality than former Speaker and perhaps soon to be Speaker again, Nancy Pelosi. We love Nancy. So this is the 8th Pride reception that we will celebrate together. I want to begin by saying thank you to all the people that I'm looking out in the audience. I see some new friends, but a lot of old friends, folks who have been with us through thick and thin. And I am grateful for all that you've done to work with us to accomplish some amazing transformations over these last 7.5 years. You know? So every year we set aside this month to celebrate the ways that so many lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender Americans have helped to make our union just a little more perfect. We honor the countless nameless heroes who paved the way for progress, the activists who marched, the advocates who organized, the lawyers who argued cases, the families who stood by their loved ones, even when it was tough. Every brave American who came out and spoke out, especially when it was tough. Because of them, because of all of you, there's a lot to be proud of today. Today, we live in America where don't ask, don't tell, don't exist no more. Because no one should have to hide who they love in order to serve the country that they love. We live in an America that protects all of us with a hate crimes law that bears the name of Matthew Shepard. We live in an America where all of us are treated more equally because visiting hours in hospitals no longer depend on who you are, and insurance companies can no longer turn somebody away simply because of who you love. Thanks to heroes like Edith Windsor and Jim Ober, I always get Jim's name. Jim knows I love him, but I never know where to put the emphasis. Obergefell. Generations of couples who insisted that love is love. We now live in an America where all of our marriages and our families are recognized as equal under the law. And that's an extraordinary thing. You know, when you talk to the upcoming generation, our kids, Malia, Sasha's generation, they instinctively know people are people and families are families. And discrimination, it's so last century, it's so passe, it doesn't make sense to them. So we live in an America where the laws are finally catching up to the hearts of kids and what they instinctively understand. So some folks never imagined we'd come this far, maybe even some in this room. Change can be slow, and I know that there have been times where at least some of the people in this room have yelled at me. But together, we've proven that change is possible, that progress is possible. It's not inevitable, though. History doesn't just travel forward. It can go backwards if we don't work hard. So we can't be complacent. We cannot be complacent. Securing the gains this country has made requires perseverance and vigilance, and it requires voting, because we've got more work to do. We still have more work to do when gay and bisexual men make up 2/3 of new HIV cases in our country. We have to work hard to make sure that jobs are not being denied, people aren't being fired because of their sexual orientation. We still have work to do when transgender persons are attacked, even killed, for just being who they are. We got work to do when LGBT people around the world still face incredible isolation and poverty and persecution and violence and even death. We have to work to make sure that every single child, no matter who they are or where they come from or what they look like or how they live, feels welcomed and valued and loved. So we're going to have to keep on pushing, and that's the work of all of us. You know, the great and often unsung civil rights hero Bayard Rustin once said, "We need in every community a group of angelic troublemakers." I like that. And that's what I see here tonight. You know, people who aren't afraid to ruffle feathers in the name of justice and equality until we extend the full promise of America to every single one of us. And that's always been our story. Not just in Selma or Seneca Falls, but in Compton's Cafe, in the Stonewall Inn. It's the story of brave Americans who are willing to risk everything, not just their own liberty or dignity, but also doing it on behalf of the dignity and liberty of generations to come. You know, they understood a truth that lies at the heart of this nation. When all Americans are treated equal, we're all more free. And that's what should give us hope. You know, despite our differences and our divisions and the many complicated issues that we grapple with, real change is possible. Minds open, hearts change, America shifts, And if the past few years have taught us anything, it's that people who love their country can change it. One of the most special moments of my presidency was that warm summer night last June when we lit up the White House. It was a powerful symbol. It was a powerful symbol here at home where more Americans finally felt accepted and whole, and that their country recognized the love that they felt. It was a beacon for people around the world who are still fighting for those rights. It was a reminder that when the change we seek comes, and when we move a little bit further on our journey toward equality and justice, we still have a responsibility to reach back and help pull up others who are striving to do the same. So enjoy tonight, have some champagne. Some of you already have, I can tell. Tomorrow, we get back to work. And by the way, we get back to work not just fighting on behalf of justice and equality for the LGBT community, but for everybody. Because one of if you've felt the sting of discrimination, then you don't just fight to end discrimination for yourself. You got to fight for the poor kid who needs opportunity. You need to fight for the working mom who can't pay the bills. You got to fight for some young woman on the other side of the world who can't get an education. It can't just be about us. It's about we and what we can do together. So I'm very proud to have fought alongside you. We got more miles in the journey, and I'm so glad that we're going to be traveling that road together. Thank you very much, everybody.
A very timely message, Mr. President.
Thank
for
you,
all of us.
Obama.
Well, because that is what it's about these days. Whatever our individual agendas have been, we do all have to work together.
Well, I'm just struck by the fact that we are not going to hear that kind of attitude from the White House. You're not going to have that kind of pride reception. You're not going to have a president who talks to us that way, or whose Justice Department is working for us, or other parts of the government. It's just going to be devastating.
So we are going to have to speak up louder.
Thank you. I hear you.
Well,
go ahead.
Look, I just, this is not a gay story, but I came across it this week to show you how far this country had come before it went on the slide into oblivion. Sammy Lee was a guy, he died at 96 this week. He won diving in the Olympics in 1948 and 1952, Korean American. But when he was a kid before World War II, in Pasadena, they had International Day at the pool when Asian, Black, and Latino children were allowed to swim. After they were gone, the pool was drained and refilled with clean water for the white children who came every other day of the week.
I was going to ask you if they drained the pool.
That was America. And look, we've still got a lot of racism in this country, and we have a lot of work to do, but now it's compounded by having a fascist government.
Well, nostalgic as I feel already for the Obama administration, I also want to hold his feet to the fire a little. A number of legal and LGBT organizations have again renewed their request to him to commute the sentence of Chelsea Manning, who has been abused enough in Fort Leavenworth and should be released. And, if I were Obama and saw this administration coming in, I would really be tempted to virtually empty the prisons.
Please.
And
so there'll be more room for political prisoners under the Trump administration?
And pardon all the DACA immigrants who are now at risk because they've put themselves on lists to get the waivers he gave them.
Yes.
I would be really trying to do everything I could to forestall the coming horror.
Because as Ann would say, brace yourself. On January 20th, President Trump intends to sign jillions of executive orders to undo whatever good Obama did and implement new right-wing things. And one of the things, now this is, you could argue that this is somewhat trivial, but Matt Barber, who was from Liberty Council, one of those right-wing religious groups, he's a big guy, he said they're going after the declaration of monuments by Obama, what they call a land grab, of public lands as monuments. And one of the things he wants to go after is the Stonewall National Monument, but he doesn't seem to understand what that is, which is a little park in front of the Stonewall. He says it would make it possible to destroy the Stonewall Inn and wipe out its stain on American history. But this is the kind of stuff they want to do.
Mark your calendar, we'll be camping outside the Stonewall Inn
We will
next
fight
summer.
back. We know how to fight back.
At least this isn't yet a Trump appointee saying this.
Yes. Well, but these are the people influencing the administration.
Yes.
And by the way, Matt,
Yes.
Stonewall Inn is private property. It's not part of the park.
Well, I am happy to throw a few thank yous to the Republican governor of the state of Georgia, Nathan Deal, who has announced that he will continue to veto discriminatory bills. He vetoed an anti-LGBT, one of these broad religious freedom bills last year, or this year, or whatever, recently. And he said he will continue to do that. Well, and he's a Republican, governor of Georgia, not a big progressive, certainly. Well, and he will be helped in this attitude by the first out gay member of the state legislature in Georgia. I think we referred to him briefly when we did an election roundup, but we'll give you a look at Sam Park, new out gay member of the Georgia, State Assembly or House of Representatives. I think we have a picture of him.
Where are you, Sam?
Representative Sam Park.
Yep, he said,
Georgia.
I'm a gay, Christian, Korean man sitting in the intersection of faith, sexual orientation, and ethnicity. I feel like being myself. I have the opportunity to build bridges between communities that haven't seen eye to eye. Good luck with that. But it's nice that the government... Okay.
All right, other news. Oh, and Senator Ben Cardin, Democrat of Maryland, has asked Secretary of State John Kerry to issue a formal apology for the Lavender Scare witch hunts and firings of people in the State Department, I guess,
yes,
in the
absolutely.
1950s.
McCarthy.
Yeah, and Cardin is also going to introduce a bill in the Senate to do that more formally from the legislature.
Well, I wish we had more resistance in Ohio, because the Republican-led House and Senate just passed legislation that would ban abortions as soon as the fetal heartbeat can be detected as early as 6 weeks after conception. No word on whether Kasich, the governor there, will sign it. But Kasich is, there's this rogue elector from, I believe, Texas, who's not going to vote for Trump, but who said, I'd like that John Kasich.
It'd be more helpful if you'd vote for Hillary.
Yes.
I will now say this for the first of what I'm sure will be 1,000 times in the next year or so, that Tom Price, the new Secretary of Health and Human Services nominated by Trump, is someone who is famous as a medical doctor for saying that his primary agenda item is to get the government out of medical decision-making. And yet, who is, of course, the prime pusher of anti-abortion legislation.
And you can make that sound nice. It's between you and your doctor, which is what we say about abortion,
But only if you were consistent and supported women's right to reproductive freedom.
But these people, I shouldn't have to explain this to our viewers, but Medicare is a single-payer system that reduces costs all across the board for medical care. If you turn it over to the insurance companies, it's just an added layer of bureaucracy. And actually, they're not so...
They're in Medicare already.
Yes, and they're not so thrilled about these quote-unquote reforms that the Republicans are proposing. And you know, you do have some resistance. You have John McCain saying, I'm not going to vote for getting rid of Obamacare without a replacement on the table. I'm not doing it. So
they've gotten that message, but they're not going to give up.
Well, and in Kentucky, they for the first time in history, they have control of the General Assembly and the governor's office for the first time in history, and they're talking about passing all kinds of religious freedom bills. Yep.
Okay.
Fairness audiences.
A couple of good notes. In Wisconsin, the Green Bay Packers have joined the LGBT Chamber of Commerce. I wish they'd been more active in the election in Wisconsin. And in Massachusetts, Walmart has finally settled the lawsuit brought against it by Jacqueline Cote, which was also a class action suit. She worked for them for many years. She had a wife who had to give up her own job to take care of her sick mother. So then she should have been on Jacqueline's health plan at Walmart as a spouse, but Walmart rejected that. And then she got sick with cancer, and they incurred hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of bills that Walmart didn't cover. So she died, Jacqueline sued, and Walmart has finally, after several years, settled that suit and the whole class action for $7.5 million. They have promised to pay everybody, all their employees who were affected by the years in which they did not acknowledge same-sex married couples. They do now. They promise they will continue to.
At least until Trump becomes president.
Yeah,
we don't know, when all bets are off.
Yeah.
What do you think about Tyler Clementi's mother, Jane Clementi, reaching out to Melania Trump on anti-bullying and trying to meet and reconcile? Well, there's a long thing that they're doing.
You know I have a soft spot for Melania.
You do, but Glenn Liner, one of our regular viewers, says that, you know, rather than being a party to her campaign, Melania's, to dry clean and enhance her profile as your ally, why not insist that she return at a later date following significant achievements on anti-bullying? And it would help not to appoint General Flynn and other bullies into these posts.
Yeah, I should withhold
That's not what Glenn said. That's what
nice
I'm
words
saying.
about
And Kirsten Gillibrand is calling for more federal funding to combat hate crimes, because in the New York alone, we've had a 30% jump in hate crimes this year.
Well, in Florida, a man has been arrested for threatening to replicate the Orlando Pulse nightclub massacre at the Miami Beach Community Church, the LGBT church in Miami Beach. They got him, they arrested him, but he was making very huge threats.
Speaking of which, the owner of the Pulse, Barbara Poma, said she doesn't plan to sell the nightclub to the city of Orlando. They had negotiated, they thought, the mayor, a $2.25 million purchase of the club. But
to make it a memorial.
She does, yeah, I don't know what she intends to do with it.
In Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, another African-American lesbian referred to in news reports as a stud, meaning a butch lesbian. Shanique Sanders, 23 years old, shot dead. No further details. And the horrible Oakland fire in the warehouse there that was basically low-income housing with no fire alarms or extinguishers or sufficient extinguishers or decent wiring. There were several transgender people killed as part of that. It was a very diverse and mixed population.
It drew from the queer black diaspora, according to some reports, but it was a mix of people, almost all artists and musicians.
Yeah,
horrible thing.
including Cash Askew, a well-known trans musician. Something called the Trans Assistance Project is raising funds to support the survivors. and families, and it is a horrible tragedy, and really the owner should be held responsible.
And another alert, just to weigh in on this: when you go into any kind of a club or whatever kind of a club it is, look for the exits, figure out how you're going to get out once you get in. There have been so many of these tragedies, outrages really, over the years where people were unable to get out, both for non-gay clubs and gay clubs. In Alabama, tragedy has struck the major resource center for LGBT youth and adults in Alabama. It's the Free to Be headquarters in Huntsville, drastically damaged in severe storms, and they're looking to recreate the space elsewhere, find another place. They're working on it. They provide direct support services in Huntsville, Birmingham, Mobile, and the Shoals area. We will include a link to what they're going through in our email. And if you want to be on our email list, go to our website, www.gayusatv.org, and you'll get a weekly email previewing what's on the program and giving you links to things like this and other things. We'll put up the link to President Obama's speech. You can watch it again separately.
gayusatv.org.
Right. I have an update from Art Leonard about the Supreme Court and what they did this week.
Okay.
They published their argument schedule for January, and Gloucester County School District was not listed. So the earliest that Title IX transgender bathroom case, this is Gavin Grimm, could be argued is February. And also, briefing was recently complete on the cert petition for the Colorado Wedding Baker case. So perhaps the court will be discussing it in their conference over the next couple of weeks.
Jeffrey Toobin is predicting in the New Yorker that Trump will nominate Diane Sykes for the
Who is Diane Sykes?
seat. Very, very, very conservative woman.
Reactionary?
Very, very, very.
In the Scalia tradition, as he promised.
Yes, exactly.
Did we?
Yes.
We did, okay. So
All right, can we move on to international news?
We can.
All right.
We can and will.
All right, well, the best news is from the Gambia,
Yes.
where the sitting president, Yahya Jammeh, has been defeated in an election.
He's been there since about 1996 or something?
I think 22 years or something.
He thought of overturning the results of the election, and he said,
He said no, and he's walking away.
Why
Good
not?
for him. He had threatened to slit the throats of gay men. He was, like many leaders around the world, very violently opposed to homosexuality. He has been beaten in a big surprise by a guy, a labor lawyer, someone who is considered a reasonable human being, and everyone is just shocked, amazed, and delighted. We're seeing upsets all over the world, but this is the first one that's a progressive upset.
Yes. One of the favorite staffers in the building that I live in is from the Gambia, and we trade stories all the time about what's going on.
And good news from Kenya, where the president there had put forth a plan to register everyone in the country who's HIV positive, including pregnant women, so he'd have their children on the list too. And the High Court there has just ruled that plan unconstitutional and rejected the idea completely, and that is good news.
A couple of good stories from Malta. Gay conversion therapy has been outlawed by them. It's called the Affirmation of Sexual Orientation, Gender Identity, and Gender Expression Bill, and it imposes fines and jail terms for anyone advertising or performing this kind of a thing. And they also say that 16-year-olds can now apply to change gender on official documents.
It used to be, you used to have to wait till 18, and they've lowered the age.
That's all
We're making note of all these as places to
Malta.
escape to. Malta, the Gambia, Kenya, the field is widening. And in Pakistan, LGBT activists are planning an inclusive mosque.
Very, very good. Oh, and it's nice to see, there was a nice story in the Times about American Muslims and Jews holding hands, working together, all that kind of stuff. This is what we're going to have to do. And, we'd like to hear from you. You can write to me at andy@gayusatv.org. Tell us what's happening in your areas. We bring you a lot of bad news, and we try to bring you the good stuff. But tell us what you're doing there that you think you'd like us to share with other people that's making a difference in your community around these issues.
Or, yes, because we think, Andy and I talk outside of here, and as we were coming here today, talking about working locally and hoping that everybody will, and that that will aggregate into.
Yes.
rather
We
than
are the
trying to-
majority, after all.
And we can't change the world overnight, but if we can each do stuff locally, that may help.
Right.
All right. AIDS news. Well, last week was World AIDS Day on December 1st, and New York City dedicated the beginnings, at least, of a New York City AIDS memorial. They've
Phase
had
one.
a little plaque or something over by.
Well, now they have, if we have any pictures of this,
Yeah,
of the AIDS
let's start
Memorial in
with
New York City, they have this sort of superstructure of, I have to say, I'm not trying to be insulting, I don't get it. I mean, it's got a huge granite floor with the words of Song of Myself are carved in. If you were going to read them, you'd have to walk around the thing 25 times to read it. This is a Jenny Holzer thing. So that's the superstructure.
That's the structure.
And then
yes.
underneath is a little fountain and the words of Song of Myself. What this has to do with AIDS, I don't know. But it was, and the name of the memorial has the word St. Vincent's in it because that's where we had a hospital. I would much rather have a hospital.
Well,
there.
that big building in the background on the left used to be the hospital, but they tore the hospital down and built all this luxury housing where the apartments are selling for $10 million
So we don't really have a hospital near us. So we're kind of out of luck.
Now there's the ceremony. Well,
Yes.
the building on the right there it now has an emergency clinic that does a lot of stuff.
That's where
so
I went to get my heart checked out.
Yeah.
I'm not knocking it.
But here, big crowd at the ceremony for the memorial.
Yeah, there was a big crowd, and I will say that the Comptroller of New York, Scott Stringer, and Corey Johnson, our city council member, made impassioned speeches about what we're up against in terms of the new fascist order, and that was good. There was a lot of thanking of all the activists. There was no reflection by these public officials on the inaction of New York City in the beginning of the crisis, and how we had to fight them all the time.
Yeah.
But you know.
Well, a little more action in D.C. on World AIDS Day because there are still AIDS activists working. So a bunch of them went to Paul Ryan's office to complain about the coming destruction of the health care system in America. And with that banner, and 11 of them got themselves arrested outside Ryan's office. They held a big rally outside. They protested the anticipated cuts in the Affordable Care Act, Medicaid, Medicare. There are still people doing this stuff, and if you are moved to do so, you can join them. I'm sure there are many federal offices in your towns where you can hold similar protests.
We want to note the passing of Dr. Burton Lee, and we have a picture of him. He's dead at 86. He was George Bush Sr.'s personal physician, and he got appointed to the first Presidential AIDS Commission. We protested that because we figured he was another guy coming from the conservative wing. There was a DeVos on that panel as well. But you know, our associate producer Bill Ballman worked with him on that, and he became one of our champions on that. And
because he was willing to talk to activists as opposed to stonewalling people.
He praised ACT UP for its role.
Yeah.
And he differed with Bush on abortion. He attacked doctors for doing too many tests just to make money. He was fired by Bill Clinton. Did you read this? He comes in, he's still the physician in the White House because of Bush. And the Clintons say he needs an allergy shot, and he says, well, let me see his records. And they say, just give him the shot. He says, I don't want to kill the president. I need to see his medical records. They fired him and the travel office. Those Clintons, 2.7 more million votes than Trump. But, you know.
All right. The Centers for Disease Control issued new statistics on World AIDS Day that new HIV infections are trending down overall. But, of course, as President Obama said 6 months ago, gay and bisexual men still constitute 2/3 of new diagnoses, especially Latino men having sex with men. African-American men have sort of leveled off on new infections, but Latinos are increasing. And then the government changed their website from AIDS.gov to HIV.gov. Okay. And
Is that a signal on how they're going to allocate benefits?
well, I think it's an attempt to be more realistic about what the issue is, which would be nice.
I thought it was very healing to be at the Broadway Cares Gypsy of the Year competition this week. This is where, you know, mainly the rank and file gypsies in the shows get together and do skits, and it's a competition, and they raise money for months, and they raised a total of $4.5 million for AIDS charities, women's health, and so much more. We appreciate their support for us. But lots of the skits made reference to what we're going through right now.
I should think so.
They're artists. They have raw feelings about this, and they did a wonderful job. I laughed, I cried. You know, they put Trump into a couple of skits, but you know, the cast of On Your Feet was singing "Seasons of Love" with the slurs that are thrown at us emblazoned on their chests, and it was just very, very, very moving. You know, Lin-Manuel Miranda wrote a song for Hamilton, and that cast, and they won the award for the best thing, and Lion King was excellent as well. So thank you, Broadway Cares.
ACT UP Dublin, Ireland held demonstrations on World AIDS Day to demand that their government make pre-exposure prophylaxis, Truvada, more available to people. And the Fenway Clinic in Boston and Callan Lord here and the Treatment Action Group TAG have banded together to ask the FDA to get a little more serious about the shortage of injectable estrogen, because it is really bad for the trans community to not have that available, and there is a big shortage.
Right.
All
Entertainment news.
Yes. Well, where do you want to start? We got a lot of stuff.
Go ahead. I don't have a lot of stuff.
Well, I'll start by congratulating our new friend Terrell Alvin McCraney, who was here a few weeks ago because he wrote the play originally from which the movie Moonlight was made.
Roughly on his own story.
Yes, terrific guy, terrific guest. We appreciated him coming in. Well, now he, you know, MacArthur Genius Awardee. He has now been named to run to be the head of the chair of the playwriting department at the Yale School of Drama,
wow,
which is his alma mater. He replaces another former Gay USA guest, Paula Vogel, who has been doing it.
If you want to head the Yale School of Drama, you have to come on this show.
Playwriting department. You must do Gay USA.
The movie Moonlight is now, according to our friend Tom O'Neill, who does the website goldderby.com. Go to goldderby.com if you want to find out, you know, who the experts say are going to win the Oscars or any other awards, Grammys or anything else, Tonys. But Moonlight is rising. It's now like second or third in the picks. Everybody's still on La La Land as the winner, but Moonlight is moving on up.
I think it's going to do very well.
And do see it.
Wonderful film. Wonderful, wonderful. And you may want to see the documentary Hockney, which I saw a while ago, but is going to play on the Smithsonian Channel on
when?
December 12th.
Write that down.
12/12, Hockney. It wasn't my favorite. I didn't think it was earth-shattering, but if you have any interest in David Hockney as an artist, it's worth seeing. And a reminder that Fun Home is touring the U.S.
Yes.
I was reminded by a viewer note it's going to be in Las Vegas in the first week of January, but I'm sure it's all over the place, and that is well worth seeing.
Just Google these things online and you'll find out where they are.
Did you see the trans list on HBO?
Not yet.
I watched it. It was, you know, it's like all these things. It's very celebrity heavy, and I sort of resent that. I would like to see more everyday people, but I thought it was really well done, and everybody had a good story to tell, and it was quite compelling. And they had, aside from the fact that they were mostly celebrities, a very diverse crowd. It captured me more than I expected it to.
I mean, I spent the weekend in...
And it's going to air a lot more on HBO.
I spent the weekend in Indiana, in Indianapolis, and Bloomington, and some other small towns. I had the chance to buy a Make America Great Trump doormat for $10, and I thought about it. It'd be nice to wipe my feet on that.
No, you don't even want that. But I did see something that showed Ronald Reagan using the exact same slogan. Actually, his was, "Let's make America great again." Exactly the
It's
same.
morning in America.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the TV show Younger?
No.
Not so much. I don't watch it, but that is, you may start watching it after that. Nico Tortorella is an actor on Younger, and he has come out officially as bisexual in an interview with Vulture, and he does a podcast also called The Love Bomb, so everybody's very excited about that. And Mandy Moore, who is a singer-actress who had a big career when she was younger and is now sort of resurgent as one of the stars of the NBC hit This Is Us and other stuff. She, in an interview, talked about her lesbian mom and gay brothers in a very,
Keep doing that.
matter-of-fact
We
way.
have to show that we're here.
Yeah. Locally here in New York, there's something called the Winter Rhythms Play Festival and performances going on at urban stages through this weekend. And on Friday, they're doing something called The Lady in Penthouse B. That's a little musical production about a gossip columnist that sounds quite charming. And then they have a closing holiday standards show mixed with Disney music. Remember Jim Brochu, who does
Yes.
The Merman and Me? He's involved in all of
Yes.
this. And he did his Merman performance, but you've missed that. But he's in the holiday.
I saw his Zero Mostel.
Well,
And I saw him on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and he missed on a question on Chekhov.
Jim! What's wrong?
But he didn't miss it. He just didn't take the question, and he took the money.
Oh, okay. And a viewer alerted me to what Turner Classic Movies is doing. They're doing this whole long celebration of 90 years of Vitaphone sound or whatever. So they've been digging up all these little shorts from the early 20th century, and a lot of them are gay. A lot of them are like gay vaudevillian comedians
Well,
and
is it
stuff.
like the Nance?
Some of it, but not entirely,
There was a
'cause-
Broadway. There were vaudeville acts with just men who were straight men, just went around flouncing around the stage, and that was a big joke.
Well, this is the teens and the 20s, and it's pre-code, so it's quite explicit. And it's just an interesting curiosity. Keep your eye on Turner Classic Movies. And in fact, they have an app, I think, that has some of their stuff.
And
so
then
you
Will
can
and
find it
Grace
there.
revived that.
You're so mean.
You know, we forgot. Well, I was heartened to see that Austria rejected a far-right government.
Exactly. That was the other good surprise.
One little. Well, and also the pipeline in the Dakotas.
Excellent. Yeah, but that's going to last about 3 minutes
All right.
until Trump
It was
gets
a
it off.
victory. And you know, there were some officials who actually stood in front of the Native Americans and apologized to them.
Really?
Yes, and knelt down in front of them for what we have done to Native Americans in this country.
Look, I thought it was great that the veterans went and stood with them and stood between them and the authorities who wanted to attack them.
Well, I had a whole bunch of other depressing news just by reading headlines, but you can
Luckily, we've run out of time.
You can do that. But
On your own.
Don't forget our advice. Get involved at the local level. Make things better.
And we'll be back next week. See you then.